Hello, everyone. So thank you so much for joining the session today. Let me share my screen. Yeah. Yeah. So today we are going to start the session of AKS Observability using Azure Monitor and Container Insight solutions and other things revolving around services that are in Azure. Before we start, I will just quickly go ahead and show you what exactly we are going to do or what exactly we are trying to achieve here. And then possibly we will see. Okay. So today we are going to deploy Kubernetes service in a resource group using bicep template. So during that process, we will be exploring uh, different component in bicep relevant to the Kubernetes deployment. Some of the basic things we will be exploring today. And in upcoming sessions, we will be exploring different things. Because as you know, Kubernetes is a very vast topic. So to begin with, we will be exploring very few things which are very much basic in nature when you are working with Kubernetes and revolving around things related to monitoring. And then in upcoming sessions, maybe I will try to explore a component specific to networking and other things, and then we'll relate those things with the monitoring topic or other operational things in Azure Kubernetes Service. Now, so as I said, so the first thing we are going to do is we are going to deploy a Kubernetes service using bicep template. We will also deploy a Grafana, Azure Managed Grafana. As you know, there is a managed service now, Azure Managed Platform as a Service, a Grafana instance. So we'll be deploying that Grafana instance. When we will be kind of deploying the Kubernetes service, it will automatically give you all these things in our log analytics workspace. All the logs will be captured in log analytics workspace. We'll be kind of configuring it in that way. Now you can see these dotted lines. These dotted lines means that right now we are not going to explore this topic, like how you can set up the alerting and other things based on this data. But yes, in upcoming session, possibly we will explore this part in future. But yes, these things can be configured as and when you have configured your Kubernetes service in such a way, you can do all these things related to alerting as well. Now coming back to the actual topic. Oops, let me close this. Yeah. So first we will explore Kubernetes, and in Kubernetes we will first go through the bicep template. So as you can see, I have already kind of created this bicep template for relevant resources because as you can see, a lot of things we have to deploy, and we can't really add these things on the run. So we have certain we will explore all these different components that we are using in bicep. But yes, these are already written, but we will explore these different basic properties or basic uses that we are doing with the Azure bicep. So as you can see, we have one folder which says Kubernetes. So within Kubernetes, we have a bicep template, which is the main template, which is being used to deploy your Kubernetes service. This bicep template will be deployed using a GitHub action, and we'll go through the GitHub actions as well. Again, we'll go through the action, what are the basic things that we are using in GitHub actions. But before we jump into the GitHub action to run this bicep template and associated task, we will quickly go through this bicep template about the Kubernetes, and then we will explore the Grafana part. After going through the Kubernetes things. So as you can see, we have these basic parameters. Now, before I continue, as you can see, right now we are not really discussing very basic level of biceps. If if you think you are not up to the mark in the kind of, you are not familiar with the parameter or modules, of course there will be little bit of, I will try to make sure that these basic things are covered. But yes, probably in upcoming session, maybe I will be planning a basic one where I can create a basic bicep template, not really going into the services specific thing. So here our major objective will be to going through the Kubernetes, specifically about the monitoring aspect, and yes, using the infrastructure as code component, which is Azure Bicep here. So as you can see, we have these three parameters. We will be expecting one, very basic things like cluster name. What is the cluster name that you want to create the Kubernetes? What would be the location, and what would be the cluster admin group ID? So here cluster admin group ID will be used to assign the administrator role for the cluster that you are going to create. Now, if you look at the bicep, the first thing is target scope. So target scope is a property in Azure Bicep file which tells that this particular bicep is deployed on a subscription scope. So if you are familiar with the scope, you can deploy your resources in different scopes, resource group, subscriptions, tenant and all. Here we are deploying this particular main bicep on a subscription. And in the subscription, what we are going to do, first thing we are going to do is we are going to create a resource group with the name that is coming with the cluster name. So whatever the cluster name we are providing, we are just adding -rg over there, and then in the cluster location, which is being provided as a parameter, we are creating a resource group. Now in this resource group, the further things are getting deployed. So the second thing we are doing here is we are deploying a module which is log analytics workspace. Now this module is similar to, you can see this is a resource definition, but this is calling a module which is residing inside this particular folder. So if I go ahead and go to the definition, you can see this is the file I'm calling. So here what we have is, it is actually deploying a resource named as log analytics operation insight, which is nothing but log analytics workspace. And here we are creating this log analytics workspace with a very basic configuration where just we are configuring its SKU. As you know, it's any resource in Azure has to be configured with the SKU, with the price, what kind of cost will be associated, what kind of resources you will be getting with this, and then the location. Nothing fancy over here, just a simple log analytics workspace to be deployed, and then it is outputting the log analytics ID here. So we are using this module here, and we are providing these parameters using this. So it is a kind of a, if you're familiar with the JSON template, in the JSON template we used to have something called linked template. Here the Microsoft has kind of improved this particular thing as a module. So it is very much similar to modules, very much similar to link template, but yes, it is better in terms of creating it, and then you can actually use it within your file. You don't really have to put it somewhere. In link template there was a lot of different things you have to take care. For example, you have to have it a public location or URL from where you can reference that link template. But here you can simply put it in the folder where your code is, and you can call that module, and then you can tell what you need to do, what you want to create. In this way, you can actually create as many log analytics workspace as you may want. So it is a kind of a reusability thing over here. Okay, so it looks like the screen is not clear. Let me try to share another screen. It seems like the screen is. I am sharing a big screen, so let me try that. Just give me a moment, guys. Okay. Yeah. So someone has posted that screen was not visible. Now, if you can just confirm, the screen should be visible now. I mean, yeah, it's a normal laptop screen now. So it should be good to go. Just let me drag back the Visual Studio here. Okay. So what we are saying here is that we have this log analytics workspace. We are creating this log analytics workspace using this module. And then the next module is actually creating the Kubernetes. So why we are creating this log analytics first? Because we have to configure it so that when we configure the Kubernetes cluster, it will be having that log analytics workspace, which will be provided to configure the logs to to be sent to this particular log analytics workspace. And then going forward, we will see how we are using this log analytics workspace to kind of see all those data that is coming as a log. But what exactly we are doing here in this module, just like in the log analytics module, we were creating a log analytics workspace. Here, if I go into this definition, you will see a kind of a comparatively little bit uh, longer file. Here, couple of parameters here, which is definitely being provided over here. And apart from that, you can see it's a very basic cluster we are deploying, a basic free tier cluster. The identity is system assigned, so we have a system assigned identity, so it will have a managed identity created. And then you can see that we have a admin group object ID, so we are adding this particular parameter, which is being coming from here as a administrator for this cluster. So this is nothing but a Azure AD group object ID. So what will happen is that once this cluster will be created, this particular group will be added as an administrator for this cluster, and then whosoever is member of that admin Azure AD group will be automatically part of cluster admin. So this is the way we are doing here. You can also add a user ID as well, but here we are doing this as a Azure AD group. We are enabling Azure RBAC, so it will allow you to interact with the Kubernetes resources using your Azure AD identity. And then, as you can see, this is agent pool configuration, very basic configuration over here. Any Kubernetes cluster you create, you have to provide that what exactly the machine size, what OS type, and all those. Do you want to enable the auto scaling? What should be the maximum size? What should be the minimum size, and all those things. The main thing over here is that we are using this log analytics workspace to configure the OMS agent part. So here what it will do, it will configure this log analytics workspace as a log collecting agent. So it will send all the log events to this log analytics workspace, and then we will see how we are using this log analytics workspace to get these data into Grafana instance as well. But right now this is pretty much basic here, configuring the log analytics workspace. And then you can see I'm using some SSS data to create an admin user account. To interact with the cluster as an admin, but not necessarily I will need it right now. And then there is one more thing here which is being used. There is one of the add-on for ingress resources. So this is for routing the traffic in the cluster. So when we deploy our workload or services, we have to have something to kind of enter in the browser so that we can reach to the workloads. So this particular ingress will be you can in production ready scenario. It is recommended to use some production ready ingress like Nginx or something like that. But here we are using a kind of a HTTP application routing add-on, which is coming with the AKS service. It's not a production ready thing, but here, of course, our objective is not really the ingress thing. So we are using it for the sake of simplicity. But in upcoming session, maybe in future, we will try to use some more, production ready routing mechanism like in Nginx and all. But here, this is something important which we will come to know when we will deploy it and we will configure the application to kind of access it. This particular part will be important to know. So, I will quickly go ahead and yeah, I have this thing here. Let me. So this one, oops, close this. Yeah. Okay. So this one is. Okay, so now so this is pretty much we are doing with AKS. Now coming back to the main file, and this is pretty much the AKS deployment here. Now, once we do this deployment, we will do it using a GitHub action. So this here is the GitHub action here. So let me open this GitHub action page. Yeah. And this GitHub page has 3 actions. One is deploying the Kubernetes resource. The second one is deploying the managed Grafana. We will look into the Grafana bicep first, and then we will go into the workflow, GitHub action workflow. And then the third thing is deploying apps on Kubernetes. So this will be the last step we will be doing where we will be deploying application over here. So first, let's go into this deploy Kubernetes action. And if we go into this, we'll see that possibly. Let's go to edit mode. Just to have a better readability, possibly. Yeah, so here, if you can see, we have these inputs, pretty much basic. What exactly the cluster name that you want to deploy, where exactly you want to deploy. Once we have these inputs in the GitHub action, it will have one simple deploy job, which is, taking an agent Ubuntu latest. And then the first thing I'm doing is I'm logging into the Azure. Now to log into the Azure, you need a credential which is saved in the secret here. So if you go to my repo main folder, here I have listed what are the secrets you will need. So the first thing you need is Azure credential, and how to get that. You just simply need to run this command. You will get a JSON object out of it, and then you need to save it as a GitHub secret there in your repository. Then this will, you can name it as you may want. Here I have named it like Azure credentials. You can name it like credential or Azure or whatever you may want to prefer. Then the next step is I'm using a CLI command where I'm first setting up the subscription. And of course, to set up the subscription, I have a secret which contains the subscription ID. So I'm setting up the subscription where I want to deploy my template. And then I'm just calling the az deploy command to deploy my bicep file, which is main within Kubernetes folder. So it is essentially deploying this particular file. So this is the file, and for this file, I need these 3 parameters to provide cluster name, cluster location, and the cluster admin group ID. So if you look at this parameter, you will see that I have cluster name, which is coming from the input of the action, cluster location, and the cluster admin group ID, which is again coming from the one of the secret. Again, it is defined here what exactly this is. It is one of the Azure AD group ID, group object ID, which is supposed to be cluster admin for your Kubernetes cluster. And then I'm putting the name for this template deployment. You can name it whatever you want. Here I am just using a kind of a dynamic name so that it will generate a name based on date and time when it is getting deployed. Now this is the bicep deployment. After this bicep deployment is done, I'm doing some few more tasks, which is doing certain more things here apart from what we have in the bicep template. So before going into that particular thing, let me go ahead and start this deployment because it will take some time. So I have a couple of run here. So yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm deploying this, and as you can see, if I go here, this is my subscription, and if I go here in the resource group, I don't have a resource group with the name of the cluster-rg. That should be the name, right? So if we look at the resource group name will be cluster name dash rg. So cluster is this rg thing is not existing yet. It will soon come over here. So let's wait for some time. And then this is, let me refresh this. It's running. Now, let it run. And in the meanwhile, let's go back to this workflow file. I just want to go into the next part. So we have already talked about this particular deploy bicep. What will happen here? Now, immediately after that, we have another task, which is again bunch of AZ-CLI command. But what it does is it enables additional container insight matrix. So when you deploy your cluster, AKS cluster, some of the matrices that you have will not be available by default, and for that you need to do few extra step, and that is what we are doing. Now, once our Kubernetes cluster will be available, I will show you what those matrices are, which will not be by default available. But in the meanwhile, I will be sharing a link for that detail, what exactly we are doing here. So yeah, let this deploy. So this is enabling the container insight matrices, which is nothing but share the. So I've just shared the link here. I mean, just for your reference. And anyway, once I will upload the recordings, I will also make sure that these links are available with you for reference. So what we are doing is we are enabling container insight additional matrices, and what those matrices are, we will soon look into those once we will have these. So these are the matrices which are not available by default. So it will be, these are the things for which you have to do a bit extra step. So that's what we are doing here. Now, the next part is we are logging into the Kubernetes cluster, which we have deployed in the previous step. And then we are applying a Kubernetes YAML file, which is nothing but a config map. So if you're familiar with the Kubernetes, you may know config maps are nothing but configuration data. And this config map is specifically for enabling Prometheus matrices in your Lognetics. So if you are familiar with Prometheus, if you want to deploy Prometheus in your Kubernetes cluster, typically you will have to deploy a couple of workload or pods, you can say, or a Helm chart, which will deploy a couple of resources in your cluster to be able to scrap the Kubernetes Prometheus matrices. But in case of Container Insight or Lognetics Workspace Container Insight, which we are using here, you just have to apply a config map, and which is again provided by Microsoft itself. You just have to kind of customize it as per your requirement. It is just a config map, and you apply it, and then your config map will make sure that the Prometheus matrices that are in your Kubernetes cluster in Azure, that is AKS, will be start getting collected on the Lognetics workspace. So you don't need a Prometheus server as such. You don't need to deploy a Prometheus as such or maintain a Prometheus server as such. So this is one of the cool feature here, that you can have a Prometheus matrices in your log analytics workspace or Azure Monitor by just deploying or configuring a config map. And that's what we are doing in the next step here in the end. So from Kubernetes point of view, what we are doing quickly is that we are deploying a Kubernetes cluster with the bicep template. We have already gone through that. We are enabling additional matrices which are available in Kubernetes, but not by default. You have to enable them by using some AGCLI command, which is again available in the documentation. And then we are kind of logging into the Kubernetes, and then we are kind of applying a config map so that we can have, Prometheus matrices in the log analytics workspace as well. So this is what this particular workflow does, and this will soon deploy a Kubernetes cluster over there. And let me go there. It should be having a resource group now, so you can see. Yeah, it should be having. Yeah, so here it is. AKS demo is the cluster name, AKS demo 01-RG, and then you can see deployment is still going on. One deployment is still going on, and we have a Kubernetes cluster here. So let this succeed once. Yeah, so it is completed now, and it should be completed on the workflow level as well very soon. So it is just finishing up some post deployment task possibly, but the deployment is completed. And if I go to the Kubernetes cluster, and if I go to the matrices, and here you will see these are the metrics which are not available by default. This is something you will have automatically, but if you want to have these metrics, these are the metrics which are being done by using the next task. So this is what we are doing with the Kubernetes workflow. As you can see, it's just completed. So this is pretty much, we are doing very basic deployment of Kubernetes using this main bicep file and this GitHub action, which is this. So now once this Kubernetes deployment is done, the next part is that we want to monitor it using a Grafana. So what we will do is we will go into I have kept it in a central folder, and in central folder again we have a main bicep file, and the main bicep file we are again first creating a resource group, and then we are using a module to deploy Grafana, and then we are again doing some role assignment thing. So I will come back to this point in the later, but first this is very much clear. We are deploying a Grafana resource group where we're deploying a module which is written here. And again, if I go to the definition, you'll see that we are using a resource which is Azure Managed Grafana, and in that we have a pretty much standard property for Grafana, and we have an additional resource which is Grafana admin role assignment. So what it is that when you deploy Grafana, you need to have a user who can log into that Grafana. By default, if you do not provide that admin user context, it won't be able to. You will have to do RBAC role assignment later if you want to log into the Grafana dashboard where you can actually see the Grafana Grafana things and all. So what I'm doing here is that I'm doing the similar kind of thing. I'm adding a group, which is again the cluster admin group as the Grafana admin. So this particular group and the people who are member in that group will be added as a Grafana admin for this particular resource, which is this Grafana. So the first thing which is happening here is that I'm I'm creating a Grafana resource and adding admin in that Grafana. So this is pretty much happening in this particular module. And based on these parameters, so what is the location, what is the resource group name, what is the the admin group object ID. The next thing is, again, I'm doing a role assignment. Now this role assignment is for monitoring reader assignment for Grafana itself. So you can see I'm providing a Grafana instance managed ID. So when you create a Grafana, it will have a managed identity of that Grafana resource. And what I'm doing is, once you, so what you have to do is, let me go back to the image. So if we look at, yeah. So what exactly we are trying to achieve here. So yeah, this is the Grafana resource we are talking about. Now this Grafana resource supposed to get data from this Azure Monitor, which is in your subscription. Now to get data monitor, it has to have permission for that to read the data so that it can monitor it. So that's what is happening here. In this particular role assignment, I'm giving this managed identity principal ID and saying that assign monitoring reader role. Actually, it is monitoring reader role. So assign the monitoring reader role to this. Sorry for that, because this is my primary screen, so it is coming on. So I will hide it. So we are getting this role assignment to the Grafana resource so that it can read data from the log analytics workspace in this subscription. So now coming back to the action. So we will go to the action. So last time we deployed Kubernetes. Now we will deploy Azure Managed Grafana. And if we deploy, let me first run it. So I'm providing the Grafana resource name and the location. Again, same thing. You can change it as well, and then run the workflow. Now it is running. It will take some time. In the meanwhile, let's go ahead and see what is happening here. So you can see similar thing, but it's comparatively very simple. Here I'm logging into the Azure using the same way and then applying this bicep template with the input and then the cluster admin group ID as a Grafana admin object ID. So it will be added as an admin so that anyone who is there can log in. And actually my ID, my Azure AD ID has been added there in this group. So I'll be able to log in. So as soon as this action will finish, it is still running. So as soon as this action will finish, it will give us the Grafana dashboard, which will allow us to log in. Now let me go there and refresh it. So it will soon create a Grafana resource group as soon as it will reach that step. Okay, so it's soon. So so far what we have explored here is these two things. We have created a Kubernetes cluster. Now we are creating a Grafana instance which has the permission to look into the Azure Monitor and associated resources for reading the data as a monitoring solution. So let's see. Grafana is there, and it is still deploying. Soon you will see the resource here, which is Azure Managed Grafana, as soon as this workflow will complete. Now there is third workflow, which is deploying the application. But before that, let's wait for this and see what happens once we have the Grafana instance here. So it has the Grafana instance, but still kind of deploying because it is kind of assigning the assignments and all. So let's wait for some time. I'll wait for. So this is pretty much just deploying the Azure bicep template, which is kind of creating the resources based on defined in the modules here. So we have to in this particular bicep file for Grafana, we have this one module for deploying the Grafana, and then the role assignment for monitoring reader role. Let's wait for this. It's just finishing up. Or maybe it has already finished. It's still deploying. Yeah, we will look into the Grafana, Alex. And RK, yes, we will see how to create action. Let me see, because a lot of things has to be covered. So because that's the reason I have all these things created already. But I'll see if I will have some time. I will just quickly create the action and will show you how easily you can create this action. Okay, so it's taking a bit time. Usually it should finish quickly. So Grafana is already there, but I'm just waiting for this deployment to finish because it's not just Grafana. As you remember, it has all these role assignment, and if this role assignment is not completed yet, it may not behave as I expect. For example, I may not be able to log in into the Grafana as an admin so that I can create dashboard and things like that. So yeah, I'm just waiting for this to finish. I think it should be finishing in next few seconds. You can see it usually finish in 6 minutes, so possibly it is about to finish. Yeah, it's 5 minutes now. So Grafana is as I said, it is a platform as a service resource where you don't really have to manage a lot of workloads in your Kubernetes cluster to use Grafana, and that's the benefit here. It is coming out of box as a resource. As you can see, it's a very simple resource where you just have a platform as a service thing, and you can actually go there, and it will have a kind of a URL where you can log in and you can access the Grafana dashboard, and you can set up your dashboard and all those things that you do normally in Grafana. And that is the benefit here. You can still deploy Grafana as you would do in a typical Kubernetes cluster in AKS as well, like using a Helm chart or using some other way to deploy those workloads. Usually you will use a Helm chart nowadays, and then you can keep them as a replica set or some kind of workload there, and then you can use them just like any other application in your Kubernetes cluster. But that is if you are looking at a more managed solution, that is where Azure Managed Grafana comes into picture. It is still kind of I would say preview. I mean, it's not really uh, yeah, I mean, it's kind of not very production ready, I would say. But yes, right now you can kind of explore it, and in coming days it can be a production ready kind of thing where you will have all the benefits that you get normally with your own workload. So the main thing or the differentiation over here is that you don't really have to take care of a lot of additional monitoring specific things which managing the Grafana workload to make sure it is running while your cluster is down and things like that. Okay, so it's deployed, and as you can see it's green. So if I will refresh it, not this one, of course this is the one I wanted to refresh the resource group itself so that we can see the deployment is succeeded. And if I go to the resource here, and if I go to the URL, then it will log me in. It will ask me to log in. And since I am already part of that admin group, it will allow me to log in. But if you miss that particular part, then it will not allow. So the first part is that you are able to log in here because you are taking care of this role assignment. Now the second part, the second role assignment, which is monitoring reader role, is coming to picture here. Let me go there. In your Grafana, if you go to this setting and data sources and go to the Azure Monitor, you can see it is asking me to select the subscription, and right now I don't have any subscription. It just came now because it just refreshed the managed identity that I have. So you can select app registration managed identity. I have selected managed identity because here I have used managed identity to assign the reader role. So this managed identity has the permission to look into the subscription as a monitoring reader role, and it is fetching that subscription, whatever the subscription I have. So if I will just load, what happened? Yeah, it's just coming and going back. Okay, so if I load the subscription, if I save and test, so we have the data now. And now if I go and look into the dashboard, and I will go into a basic one where I will be able to see all the resources that we have here in Azure. Now, this is pretty much basic Grafana dashboard for Azure resources, but there are pre-built dashboard for specifically for the container workload, that is AKS. And for that, you need to either create your own or you can import those dashboard using this. So it is already deployed there with some user on the grafana.com gallery, and you can just simply go ahead and fetch that, and you can import it within the Azure Monitor folder. So if I import it in Azure Monitor folder, what it does is it looks into this workspace, and the resource group that I have my Kubernetes, I have to select, and then it will automatically select what are the namespaces that I have, and based on those things, it will fetch the default Kubernetes level, what I would say, Grafana visualizations, which has been configured. And then of course you can create your own dashboard. Right now we are not getting into that particular thing. Possibly in the next session or upcoming session we will get into the place where we will create our own dashboard. But right now the objective here is to show how you can deploy the Kubernetes resources. How do you integrate the things? What are the things that you need to take care, for example the role assignment and all those things, so that you can access those data in the Grafana dashboard here. And as you can see, it is quickly loading up as and when I am loading those visualization in this particular Grafana instance. So this is this is pretty much very similar to what you have typically Grafana. The only difference is that this Grafana is like a typical Grafana, typical Azure resource. And when I was telling about the managed identity, this is the managed identity I have provided with the role assignment. So if I look at the role assignment, it should show me the Azure monitoring reader role assignment is existing. If Microsoft, yeah, so as you can see, this was done as part of the deployment. And the other assignment that I was talking about the admin role assignment, if I look into this and if I check the group, so you can see this is the Kube admin who has Grafana admin access. And if I go into this Kube admin and if I look into the members, I should be added here as a member, and that's the reason I am able to log into this Grafana dashboard as an administrator. So these are the basic 2 points which you need to make sure when you are automating this deployment. Other than that, else you will have to add these 2 role assignment manually. Now coming back to the third part, which is deploying the apps on the Kubernetes. Let me first get into this. And yeah, so this is so far what we have done is we have 2 resource groups. Let me go there. So we have 2 resource groups. I mean, we have many resource groups here, but we have created these 2 resource groups. One resource group does have the Kubernetes cluster, and another one have the Grafana dashboard, which is able to get the data from the Azure specifically, but also from the Kubernetes if you want to monitor the Kubernetes specifically. Now the next part is to deploy a very simple workload and see how exactly you can deploy using GitHub Action, or you can do this manually as well. This one I have prepared with a very basic deployment to demonstrate how do you see those things in the workflow as well as in the Grafana, but it can be done in much better way, and that possibly can be the next task for me or for you. Let me go to this, and in the Kubernetes we have this apps, and in the apps we have this simple deployment file. Now, as I said, it's a very simple deployment. This can be easily deployed using the Helm chart, and that's what my next session can be. I have already created the Helm chart, but right now I'm not going into the Helm chart thing because that's adding another complexity. Right now, our objectivity is just to deploy this deployment, which has one service, one deployment, which is simply deploying the hello world from MCR repository. It is a Microsoft hosted repository. I have not developed it. I have not done anything special here. It's just coming from the Microsoft itself and configuring the ingress resource. And that's where this particular thing comes into picture. So if you remember, we have enabled this add-on. So if you look at the main, and if I go to the module, then this HTTP application routing is the one we are using. So if you will use something else for your ingress, that is the one you are going to provide, or some other way, whatever the ways that particular provider expect you to configure your ingress. But here we are using this HTTP add-on way to configure the ingress, and that's the only thing which is very much specific to this particular deployment. This is not a recommended way for production workload. I have to give this disclaimer because this is not really useful for production ready workload, but it is just for a kind of for demonstrating the use case here. For us, this is pretty much basic I wanted to do. If you want to do, if we want to do the production ready kind of ingress thing, we have to get into the application gateway ingress, or we have to get into the Nginx ingress, which is provided in AKS as well. Again, it's something that we can consider as a next item. And I'm planning to have that as a network specific thing or something. Very, very important topic within Kubernetes, but yes, cannot be discussed here as part of this demo. Now, here we have demonstrated it. Now, when you deploy, you have to mention your host name. So this is the URL that you will be accessing. Now this URL has this particular part which is dynamic, which is kind of when you enable this particular add-on, it gives you a DNS host name which is supposed to be provided when you are defining your ingress route. So this particular thing is the old one. I have to get the one which is the latest one. I mean this particular DNS host, and which is again defined. If you look at the main bicep, and if you look at the output, we have this output coming in from the deployment. So if I go to the deployment, in the subscription, possibly because we deployed on the subscription level, and go to the deployments. Yeah. And in the deployment, you will have all the list of deployment here. So you can see one we have for Grafana, one we have for Kubernetes. A lot of deployment. You can see similar names. I was just testing out yesterday, and or day before yesterday. Now let's go to the latest one. This is the one that we deployed just recently. Not this one, possibly. Or this is, yeah, this is not showing the correct data. Let's go there. 1752, and yeah, this can be the one. And if you go here, and if you go to this output, you will see this particular output. This is the one I want, and I will have to do this manually on this. Yeah, this is the one which I want to automate using hand chart and all. But yes, this is something later. So this is a URL that will be there when this deployment will finish. So I'll just quickly go ahead and yeah, this is simple. Add there. I'm just committing this so that my workflow will have the latest file, which has the latest DNS host entry, which will create a proper DNS, proper ingress. And now I will go to the action. We'll go to the not apps and this simple. Yeah, if I go to this particular workflow, it has already started. So it is again very simple here. I'm just asking the cluster name, and then based on that, I'm first logging into the Azure. Yeah. Then getting the subscription, and then setting the Kubernetes context, just like you log into any Kubernetes cluster, and then running this YAML file using kubectl apply. So this is pretty much basic Kubernetes deployment here from this particular folder. And if you look at, this is what it is. So if I go into the folder, this is the same file that we are deploying here. So, and that's the reason I have to commit, because I have to update this value. Again, this is not the best way to automate this deployment. This can be done using much better again, but it will be something which can be considered as a separate topic to discuss, because a lot of things can be discussed there. Okay, so this is it for the actions. So let's see what is happening. Oh, it has already deployed. Now let's do one thing before we look into the. Let's see. Yeah. And I'll go to the resource group. Or maybe this one. And I'll go to this Kubernetes. I'll log into this Kubernetes cluster to see what is happening there. So log into this, and yeah. So it will merge add the context to my kubeconfig file. And then what I can do is I can just check get ingress, and again it will ask me. Let's go ahead and copy this. And okay, so we are logged in and it should soon. Okay, so as you can see, we have this ingress, and if I see this CTL, it should show me the hello world as well. Now let's see this particular URL. And if I look at this URL in the browser, it should show. Okay, it's taking some time. This will take some time actually. It's a known issue with this particular ingress thing. Let's wait for some time. In the meanwhile, yeah, so it's there. It's a DNS issue actually, DNS cache issue. It should come up in the Chrome as well. Yeah, so this is the very simple thing, but this is what we have deployed so far. And now if I go to this cluster, and if I go to this default namespace, and not clusters, not the namespace, yeah, maybe consumption namespace as well. So you will see soon things over here related to that pod CPU. It will soon show up the AKS hello world. It just started showing up because it just got started now. So it will start showing things for you for the cluster. And right now, these are very basic metrics. Again, for the Kubernetes based on this dashboard, you can create your own dashboard based on the matrices that you have, or deploy those things. I mean, kind of customize it as per your demand. I mean, as per your requirement from the monitoring point of view. But this is pretty much basic from Kubernetes in Azure, and this Grafana service that is coming from Microsoft Azure. Now the next point here I want to discuss about briefly, and before that, let me see what questions we have so far. Okay, so we have question from Alex that, yeah, cost wise, yes, yeah, licensing cost for this particular service is bit complex here from Microsoft, but when do you need it and when you don't need it? That's the question here. I mean, when do you need to have, when should you use Azure Managed Grafana, and when should you use hosted Grafana solution? I mean, self-managed Grafana solution. The primary factor is that if you have, so look at this from the context of having an engineering team, having a cluster, and then revolving task revolving around that cluster. Now, to have a highly available cluster is one thing, and then to have a highly available monitoring solution around it is another thing. So if you will have your own managed monitoring thing like Grafana, then first of all, you have to look at from the scalability point of view that you should be ready to scale your Grafana things, as your cluster environments grow, which is not very difficult task to do, because again, you are doing it with Kubernetes, so it's not very complex thing to do. It is automatable and you can do it. The next thing is having it separately from your typical cluster workload, because if you are keeping it inside your cluster workload, then it may be possible that when your cluster is down, then your Grafana is also impacted. So you have to make sure that you have to have a separate parallel system hosting only your Grafana system or resources, or maybe have to have that level of isolation where your Grafana resources will not be impacted with the impact on your primary clusters hosting the workload for your customer or for your internal teams. So if you have that level of maturity in managing your own Grafana instance, then yes, you are having I mean, you don't really need Azure Managed or any other managed Grafana solution. But if you think that your cluster is actually, the primary workload is more important than having, concentrating on the Grafana or other enabler services, I would say these are enabler services for you, very critical, but not your primary core thing. In that case, exploring this Azure Managed Grafana is something that you can explore. Having said that, um, I would say Grafana managed service is still not up to mark where people would like to see, but as we know, with the maturity, with the ongoing adoption, it may come across where you will have a very competitive resource here in Azure for Grafana as well, just like AKS that you have. Now, okay, so let's go back to the point here about the one thing which I was talking about. We also did one thing here in the actions. If I go to the Kubernetes, in the yeah, this one. So we deployed a config map, and which is nothing but config map related to Prometheus. So based on this configuration, your cluster is now collecting Prometheus matrices as well. And now to see that, you can go to the log and text workspace. Yeah. So you can go to this and you can go here. We'll see first here and then we'll see in the Prometheus. So first, let me go to the not Prometheus, sorry, the Grafana. So first we will see in the Lognetics workspace, which is there in the resource group. If I go to the resource group, if I go here, and if I go to the logs, and in the logs, if I type insight metrics, where space contains Prometheus, please, this alone will give you everything related to Prometheus. So if you look at, you'll see that all the matrices related to Prometheus, as per the the definition that we have for the config map, is being collected here, in the log analytics workspace. The same thing you can access in Grafana using I will add a new panel over here. And in the panel, I can simply go ahead and monitor metrics logs. And here I will select the resource, again, the log analytics workspace. So this log analytics workspace. And I can select this, and here also I can see because of screen size. And this is not loading. Okay. Yes. Let me do one more thing here before I go there. I wanted to show one more thing. So you can see, and this is something provided by Microsoft itself, that how many matrices you are collecting from Prometheus. So again, this is nothing something I have constructed. This is just a kind of, it will show you how many matrices you are collecting now. This is, and then of course all the matrices you can see in this particular table in the log analytics workspace. Now again, let me go back and let me see why this particular thing is not showing up. Here. Add a row and a panel over here. In this panel, I want to add Azure Monitor. And in the Azure Monitor, I want to select logs and to select down. This is strange. It should just show up. Something I'm doing wrong or what? Maybe this one. Maybe. Just before your demo, it's not working. Insights matrix is there. So it's not showing up here. This is strange. Possibly I will have to, it was just working. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is something I don't know. This is the last thing I wanted to show, but I'm not sure why it is not showing up. This, all I want to do is running this query here. Yeah, running this query so that you can actually visualize this same matrices that you can see over here in the Grafana, and it's possible. I'm not sure why it is not coming over here when I'm selecting this, or maybe it's taking some time to come over here or what, but this is, yeah, but this is pretty much what I wanted to show. Now Next thing I wanted to do, which I could not do in this particular demo, was the first thing is that I will be kind of deploying this as a Helm chart. But to do that, I want to get started with the Helm basics and then getting into the deployment using Helm, and then seeing things how things can be automated using GitHub Actions. And yeah, these are the GitHub Actions that we have, and very much you can use this repository by just following this README file. Very simple. You just have to have these two things in your three things actually. You already have a subscription ID if you have access. Then you have to have an Azure ID. You have to have that group object ID, and then you have to have a credential that you can get using this subscription. I mean, service principal creation process. And then you can use this to deploy in your Azure and see how it is working, and possibly let me know why this is not working for me. For the Grafana should be working. Let me try. Sometime in the demo, you can't be able to see what is obvious, but okay. Let's see why. Problem is there. Okay, anyways, we'll see this. This is the last time I'm trying. If it is not working, then possibly I will have to check what is the problem here. Maybe I'm missing some basic point which I did not encounter during my prep. Yeah, did not happen. You just have to select the correct log analytics workspace, and then it shows you what you want to see. But just like in the Azure Monitor, I can see. So same method works here, but I'm not sure why it is not working. So usually you can, when you type, yeah, you see, this is what I wanted to. Okay, so where you can, put name, very similar thing here. Let me copy paste here. I have this command for this one. So this is pretty much disk space thing, which I already have it from. And if I look at yeah, so or because of screen thing, I'm not able to see. But now it is coming from as some data is not coming now because of, I don't know, some issue is there. Earlier it was not picking the query, now it is like okay, no reason to waste time here. Possibly it is something that I am not able to get. Monitor not matters, should be log. Okay. So yeah, you can see, I mean, the actual thing is there. You just have to write the query here, what you want to kind of see, and you have to have the right query for the resource that you want to access, and then it should what it will do, it will generate the data, and then it will show the data, and it is showing, but due to some reason it's not showing properly. So you can see the data is coming here now, and if I save it and go back, so it will start showing up here. This is actually the disk uses data, but it's not making sense right now. It seems like some issue is there because of which the load it is not loading the correct data right now, because as you know, it takes some time to kind of put the data into the Longitex workspace, a valid data, so that you can have proper visualization. So it will take some time to render and all. Which is pretty much same in any of the logging solution. It takes some 30-40 minutes to kind of give you a meaningful data. But here you can see it's for as far as cluster is concerned, you can see all the component which is coming in the inbuilt dashboard, which is again developed and deployed in the Grafana gallery. You can easily connect the Azure Monitor and start getting insight from your cluster, and then later on you can add more panels over here, just typical panels, and you can use typical KQL query. I mean Azure Grafana, I mean Azure Resource Manager, sorry, the log analytics custo query, and then you can show your data over here. This is pretty much to start with. Possibly the next session I will be planning to kind of expand this particular bicep file to include one of the production ready network resources, such as either Azure Application Gateway or the I mean kind of not using this, using a better resource like Azure Application Gateway ingress resource or Nginx ingress resource, and then deploying application through hand chart and application GitHub Actions. This is pretty much I think I planned for. And yeah, there was a question, how do you, I will not create an action file, but I will show you how easily you can create. Actually, it's not very it's very simple to create an action file. So you can go there and I can create a new workflow, and I can create a simple workflow, and you can see it's already there, and it has already a very basic inbuilt things. And if you see, and if you have a working workflow file, maybe you can compare it with my workflow file, one of the yeah, maybe Kubernetes. So if I go here and open it, so you can see this, you can easily configure it the way you want. So you can name the name of the deployment, GitHub action workflow. When do you want to deploy using push on main branch or on pull request or just workflow dispatch? So for me, I have removed these two. I don't want these. So you can see I don't have anything like that. I have just workflow dispatch. So workflow dispatch is something when you call this action uh, like this. So when I have this, when I go to action, and when I have the option to just call it like this. So this is workflow dispatch. So when you want to deploy it on demand, you use this way, or you want to deploy like a a continuous integration, like on a trigger, then you keep it like that, on a branch or on a pull request. Right now, this is not on a continuous integration, but yes, going forward soon it will be like a continuous integration. Right now, for demonstration purpose, we don't have this continuous integration. And then you have these jobs, as many you can have, and then what agent you want. So when you run these tasks, it's supposed to run somewhere. So this is what it is running. So it will go ahead and find a runner from GitHub, and it will pick a OS defined by you. And if you, so for us, these tasks need a Ubuntu server, but you can have different server as well. So if you go ahead, GitHub hosted runners, then you will see that what are the different runners you have available, supported runner and hard. So you can see that they have these different runners. I am using the Ubuntu latest. So when you select Ubuntu latest, you can see Windows latest will pick either of these, or in the same way, if I will select Ubuntu latest, it will load this one, or I can be very specific about Ubuntu image as well, like 18.04 or 22.04, whatever. So these are the servers you have. So you can select if you think your tasks are Windows tasks like PowerShell command or some PowerShell specific task that you are going to do in action, then you will be picking Windows uh, runner instead of Ubuntu. But most possibly anything doing with Kubernetes, then you'll be good with Ubuntu. And then these tasks, you can see these are the tasks that I am doing. So the first task is checking out. So checkout is like, it will kind of git clone the repository. So entire bicep repo will be cloned in this server, and then next task will run. So like in my working example, what I'm doing here is that if I go to this, so I'm first going into the repository, I'm checking out, then I'm logging into the Azure by using these, this action. So you can have different action here. You can search action. So apart from these, so if I search here, you can see these actions are provided, and if you click one of them, and if you click on them, you will automatically get the predefined what you call configuration that is needed for this particular task. And you can also go to the documentation of that particular task and see how to use it, and what are the prerequisites that you have and all those things. So this is the way you can use either marketplace task, any task here. There are a lot of tasks depending upon the thing that you want to do. So for example, you want to do something related to Jenkins. Maybe someone has deployed something here. Something related to maybe you want to do something related to Docker. So you have these Docker tasks here. Depending upon the use case, you may be searching there. And if you have a simple script, shell script, you can just go there and pick one of the tasks here, or maybe you can pick a, Azure CLI task, and then you can run this. So, this is the way you can simply create a workflow. Once you create the workflow, this workflow will be available here, just like this. Possibly I'll be creating a new, maybe we will have a new session for GitHub Actions basics. But yes, this is pretty much basic. I would say I just thought of clearing this because this question came up. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty much I wanted to cover, and I think I am almost done. And I don't have any question yet. So yeah, this is pretty much basic. We have covered what we have done so far is I go to the yeah. So yeah, so this is what we have created so far. We have created a Kubernetes cluster. We have created a Grafana instance. We have looked into the logs from Grafana, from log analytics to the Grafana. We have seen how you can visualize different resources in Grafana as well as Kubernetes specific resources. And then we have seen like you can also query other matrices in the Grafana and create your own custom uh, visualization in the inbuilt dashboard as well. So this is pretty much what we have today. I hope you enjoyed this session. I mean, we wanted to cover a lot of things in a very small time. Maybe I did something in fast way, but yes, next I'll possibly try to do some basics either on the Kubernetes specific component like networking, or I'll be hosting another session on GitHub Actions. But yeah, you'll get the link in the group. So if you are already part of the group, then you'll be getting the notification there. If not, then I'll request you to join our group.
I'm just posting our group link here. That's sure. So it's a Telegram group. You can just go ahead and kind of join that group. That is it from my side. Hope you liked it. Good evening, good night, and thanks for joining the session. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Thank you. Bye-bye.